Hello everyone, my name is Aaron Christensen and this is Horror 101 with Dr. AC, and welcome back to Scare-A-Thon 2024, benefiting the Women's Reproductive Rights Assistance Project. You can find out all about the fundraiser right up here at this link. Tonight we're going to be talking about our third week of our box set Thursdays. And I was supposed to be accompanied by a guest tonight, but that person was not able to make it. So maybe it was deliberate, because tonight's box set was not one, not two, but three Birdemic movies. This is from Severin, the Wings of Disaster Birdemic Trilogy, consisting of Birdemic Shock and Terror from 2010. Look, I've got banners. And Birdemic 2, The Resurrection, 2013. And then we had to wait almost 10 years for Birdemic 3, Sea Eagle, it's not seagulls, it's sea eagles, from 2022. And we'll begin at the beginning, because I remember seeing, actually it was for a Scare-A-Thon. It was back in 2011. And I remember hearing about Birdemic, Shock and Terror, and how amazingly bad it was. And so I ended up watching it. And I'm just now realizing I've watched all of these movies by myself. I've never actually watched them with anybody, much less a crowd, which I feel like is how they should be experienced. At the same time, watching them alone, I absolutely appreciated what was happening with the first one. There's this great sense of earnestness of writer-director James Nguyen, trying to make the best movie he could with the money that he had, or the money he didn't have. But he had a lot of chutzpah and a lot of, desire to emulate his film heroes and Hitchcock. It took, I guess, over the course of 4 years, which, let's think about the fact that Peter Jackson took 4 years to make Bad Taste. That ended up going to Cannes. This one didn't get accepted into any film festivals. And so James Nguyen went to Sundance and basically guerrilla marketed it in the streets. Somebody finally checked it out and they were like, wow, this movie is so terrible, but it's crossing over into that so bad it's good, because of that sense of earnestness. Unlike, Sharknado or Cocaine Werewolf, this isn't a joke. James Nguyen really is trying to tell a story of the dangers of climate change and global warming, and saying, look, if we don't fix the earth, if we don't fix this problem, bad things are going to happen. And this could be one of them. Birds might start attacking. Nature might start striking back. And there's just that sense of childlike wonder that I think translates through, and that's what audiences were responding to. Yes, it's completely ineptly made. The lighting is bad, the sound is bad, the lines coming out of the actors are not good. The actors are not especially good, but everybody is doing their best, and everybody's really trying. I had not seen it since 2011, and watching it a second time around, I was actually kind of impressed by the scope of what James Nguyen is going for. I mean, it isn't just let's hang out in an apartment complex and shoot a drama. No, he's all over the place. He's got tons of locations and tons of setups. And again, it's not necessarily technically proficient. I haven't even gotten to the special effects yet. We'll get there in just a second. We aren't engaged by this beautiful technical display. What we're impressed by is the fact that this guy is telling a story, and he's telling it like a 5-year-old tells it, where you go into little detail about little things, and then you have just sweeping, and then they end up across town. It's you don't think about how they got across town. They're across town now. That's how I see Birdemic Shock and Terror. It's a story told by a 5-year-old, and there's that kind of 5-year-old purity to it. If you engage with it at that level, you're like, wow, this is quite a story. Now, what most people take away from it, though, is they remember the video game Birds. It's basically clip art of these eagles that are just flapping their wings. Occasionally, they swoop in. Sometimes they're shot from a distance, so it looks like a flock of birds, and you just see one little flap every once in a while. And as I was watching, I was like, every time one of those birds flaps, that is a choice made by our director. He's like, and we should have a flap there. and that should be a flap there. And again, there's just that sense of creative purity, somebody who doesn't quite know what they're doing, but they know they really want to make a movie. And I kind of go back to Cocaine Werewolf, where I asked, why is this movie being made? Birdemic Shock and Terror was a movie that James Nguyen really, really wanted to make. He wanted to emulate his hero, Alfred Hitchcock. He wanted to do his version of the birds. And so I have an amused admiration for the film. I don't think it's good. I don't necessarily think it's so bad it's good. I think it's really interesting and engaging and pure, and it takes way too long to get to where it's going, and the whole thing just drags out longer than it needs to. But if you make friends with the filmmaker, as I've said on numerous shows, if you make friends with the low budget filmmaker and you start rooting for them, it's such a more rewarding experience. I have not yet listened to the commentary. That's the thing, like this box set. So all three of these films have tons of extras. Severin really outdid themselves. So the first film was distributed by Severin, and it has audio commentary by James Nguyen. It also has commentary by our two stars, Alan Bach and Whitney Moore. There's some deleted scenes. Severin created like the Birdemic experience, where they kind of road showed it around and did like midnight screenings, and that's how it became the kind of word of mouth midnight movie sensation that it became. And then there's also James Nguyen was on a show called Movie Close Up, which is basically like an interview back when the film was still in production. He just had like little scenes from it. But again, it's packed with extras, and Severin has really taken care with it, and they took care of it with the initial release. If we move forward to 2013's Birdemic 2, The Resurrection, that's where James Nguyen had already had a pretty good taste of success. He had gone to all these midnight screenings, and he was basically being feted as like an underground hero. And so when time came to make the sequel, there was a sense of self-awareness that did not wear well, because we have basically the two stars from the first film, and they meet up with a Hollywood director, and there's lots of jokes about bad movies and misunderstood movies. And, then the birds attack, and it's still the same kind of terrible production values, but the whole thing starts to feel a little more calculated this time around. And I think that's where the flaw is that there isn't that sense of purity. There isn't that sense of honesty. There isn't that sense of somebody trying to do their best. This is somebody going, I need to give them the bad movie stuff that they liked. At the same time, I'm a creative and I want to do the best movie I can. So there's that weird push-pull, and I don't know that Birdemic 2 really works, but he is trying. He's walking kind of an unwinnable line. If you try to set out to make a bad movie, you get your wish. It's actually a bad movie and not necessarily an enjoyable cult movie. Again, we have 3 commentary tracks on this one. One with James Nguyen, producer Jeff Gross, and Alan Bach and Thomas Favaloro. And then cinematographer and actress Whitney Moore, they are on the 3rd track. And then there's also cast and crew interviews. It's one of those things where it doesn't quite sit as well. It doesn't go over as well. It is the 7-year-old or 9-year-old coming to you and acting like a 5-year-old. And you're like, it's not cute anymore. Let's see what you've got now. Let's see what your 9-year-old self can do. I think it's kind of unfortunate that James Nguyen got trapped in the Birdemic world, because I think he could have done something else. I don't think this was the story he was burning to tell. I think he'd already told it. Then if we flash forward to 2022, David Gregory and Carl Daft of Severin, they helped James make his 3rd film, Birdemic 3, Sea Eagle. This one's an odd one, because that sense of sincerity is back, in that James Nguyen, he knows what people have come for. They've come to see the terrible special effects, but he waits for over an hour. Well, no, not quite an hour. He waits for not quite an hour to deliver the birds. And up until that point, it is just a screed of global warming and environmental alarm and, a little love story along the way. And that is what gives it its sense of genuine authenticity. James knows what people want to see, and he's like, but wait, I have to tell you my message first. I have to deliver my message that might save the world first. Before I give you my cheesy birds, I have to tell you and I have to warn you, and you need to know that climate change is bad. That I kind of enjoyed. It goes on way too long, and I confess I started flipping through the different commentary tracks. There's one by James Nguyen. There's one with our cast members, Ryan Lord, Julia Colbert, and Alan Bach is back again as Rod. And then there's the 4-time Jeopardy champion Andy Wood and his neighbor Tony, which are on the 3rd commentary track. I will say the 2nd track, the one with the actors, that one's the most enjoyable, even though they're kind of shitting all over their movie and all over James. It's entertaining, and it's that kind of thing, you don't want to watch the movie alone. That's probably the track to watch it with in terms of being around people who are going to mock the movie with you. James's track is very sincere. He's talking about the choices he's making. He's talking about why he did what he did. He's even admitting that the effects of the birds, which are slightly better, they're kind of more animated this time as opposed to clip art. Like they look like, kind of like Walt Disney animated birds, which is not to say they're good, not to say they're, realistic or really an effective way of storytelling, but he acknowledges it. And then at the same time, he says, but you kind of go with it. You acknowledge that, these are the limitations under which I'm working, and you buy into it so that you can go along for the ride. And to some effect, he's correct in that the audiences do have to accept that this is the menace. These cartoon birds are the menace, and they're attacking our heroes, and that's what we're going to have to deal with. Do I think it's a good movie? No. I mean, I don't think it comes close to being what the first one is. It does feel very much like it's that same joke that's been told. I don't want to get morbid, but it's kind of like, the 95-year-old version of the 5-year-old who's telling the story, and there's a certain charm, and we were patient with it in a way that we maybe weren't with the 9-year-old. We are like, yep, Grandpa, I know you're telling us that story, the one you told us before. You've told us it a lot of times. And it's a little bit more like that, where there's a knowledge that the visit will come to an end at some point, and we will all go home. And that's kind of how I felt watching Birdemic 3, is that this too shall pass. I will get to the end of this. I've seen worse. And that's the thing. I've seen worse than all of these movies. But anyway, Severin has put together a nice package with both their Severin label and their Intervision label. And I don't know if you can see it. Oh, there it goes. Yeah. So there's a lenticular case where you can see the little bird's wings flapping, which is kind of fun. And it comes in this, case like so. You got the 3 jewel cases. So they did James right. For fans of the series, this is absolutely worth picking up, or you could just pick up the first one individually from Severin. The only thing worse than, watching Birdemic movies alone is having to talk about them alone. So if you have seen the Birdemic movies and you've made it this far into the video, please let us know your thoughts about the Birdemic movies. And I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And again, thank you. This is Scare-A-Thon 2024. Benefiting the Women's Reproductive Rights Assistance Project. And that's really what this is about. We are more than halfway through the month, so now is the time to make your donations via the link in the description below. And thank you so much for tuning in for Box Set Thursdays, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow, where we'll be having both our daily Scare-A-Thon film as well as our Friday Night Frights. So stay tuned for that. Everybody, have a great weekend and keep sharing the scare.